The Aurelian Imperium did not conquer, it absorbed. It was a monolith of living, breathing technology, an empire ruled from the starborn throne, a conduit of polished, ancient bone and biocircuitry that pulsed with the light of a captured nebula. The throne was the anchor, but the ship was the crown mind. This ancient, superintelligent presence was not merely a computer. It was a collective consciousness, a sea of Aurelian ancestors digitized and woven into the very fabric of the empire. Its voice was the hum that vibrated in the decks of every ship, the flawless logic that dictated fleet movements, and the cold, choral sigh that Empress Calith Orion felt against her own spine. She sat upon the starborn throne now, not in the ancestral palace, but on the command spire of the super-dreadnought Aurora Crown. The ship was a statement of power, a city-sized spearhead leading a fleet of 3,000 vessels, yet today it served as a cathedral. The immense viewport before her looked out onto the earth, a swirl of defiant blue and white, the Imperium's newest and most problematic acquisition. Calith was young to be an empress. Her biomechanical enhancements were subtle, fine filaments of pale gold tracing the high arch of her cheekbones and reinforcing the vertebrae of her neck, allowing her to interface with the throne for grueling, day-long sessions. She was rigid, honed, and deeply weary. The High Conclave, the council of aristocratic shells, who had ruled as regents before her ascension, still watched her. They were the conservatives, the purists, and they saw her new alliance as a stain. This marriage was the concession, to bind the volatile, chaotic, and frighteningly resourceful human race to the Imperium. The Crown Mind had calculated a 9% probability of failure through conventional subjugation, but a 93% chance of success through alliance. The Conclave had balked, until Regent Arak-Zur, their unofficial leader, had proposed the solution: a political marriage, one designed to fail. Calith was certain, one designed to prove that the soft, frail biology of humanity was a liability. Her new husband, Noah Hart. She had seen his file, a document so thin it was insulting. He was designated an artisan maintainer, a repairman, a curator of antiques. The official portrait showed a man of medium height and slender build, with dark, unruly hair and eyes that seemed preoccupied. He looked with Aurelian sensibilities, unfinished, soft. He was not augmented. He carried no visible weaponry. His lineage was unremarkable. He was, in every sense, weak. The ceremony had been brief, a sterile affair of data packs and scanned signatures conducted hours earlier. Now, the Aurora Crown was hosting the reception, a grotesque charade of celebration. The Grand Promenade was filled with the Aurelian elite, their metallic augmentations gleaming under the artificial sunlight, their voices a low, polite murmur. They were beautiful, and they were predators. Calith, her ceremonial armor exchanged for a simpler gown that left her interface ports bare, watched him. Noah Hart, the human consort, stood near a nutrient dispenser, though he held a strange, steaming, ceramic cup. He had brought his own provisions. He was declining the synthesized, perfect sustenance of the Aureli, and was instead drinking a dark, murky infusion. Coffee, his file had called it, a primitive stimulant. He was also, she noted, surrounded, not by admirers, but by the curious. A trio of highborn officers, their chest plates gleaming, were speaking to him. Calith drifted closer, her approach silencing all conversation within 10 paces. "And you truly require 8 hours of unconsciousness?" One officer, a captain, was asking. His tone was not overtly hostile, merely baffled. Noah Hart smiled, a small, tired expression. He lifted his cup. "Only if I miss this," he said. His voice was quiet, with a low, smooth texture. "And it is not so much a requirement as a biological necessity. Like I believe you call it the sustenance resonance." "We resonate for 20 minutes," the captain replied stiffly. "It repairs all cellular decay." "Ah, then you are far more efficient," Noah said, taking a sip. "We are terribly inefficient. We leak, we get cold, and we have to shut down entirely just to process the day. It is a terrible design." One of the younger officers, a woman with fiber-optic hair, actually chuckled, a sharp, surprised sound. Noah turned his gaze to her, and his smile brightened just slightly. "On top of that, I am told I am quite handy at fixing things. But I have a tendency to misplace my kinetic drivers. I suspect I am the galaxy's first artisan maintainer who will need his own maintenance." The captain looked confused, but the other officers were smiling. Noah was not defending himself. He was not challenging them. He was, she realized, agreeing with their unspoken assessment. He was weak, inefficient, and disorganized. And by presenting it with such gentle, self-deprecating humor, he was robbing their criticisms of their power. He was disarming them by laying down his arms. Caliph felt a spike of frustration. This was not the behavior of a consort. This was the behavior of a court jester. Regent Arakjir materialized at her elbow. He was a tall, severe man whose enhancements were not gold, but dull, weaponized iron. His voice was a synthesized bass that seemed to vibrate in her teeth. "A charming creature, Empress. It seems humanity has sent us a poet, when we were expecting at least a soldier." "He is what the Alliance required," Caliph said, her voice flat. "He is a vulnerability," Arak countered, his gaze fixed on Noah. "Softness invites corrosion. The Conclave fears this gesture will be read as a mortal weakness by our enemies. The Obsidian Cartel, for instance, thrives on such weakness." Caliph turned to him. "The cartel thrives on the funding they receive from sympathetic nobles within the Conclave. Regent, perhaps you should address that corrosion first." Arak's metallic face was incapable of expression, but his optical sensors narrowed. "You are young, Empress. You believe a new, untested alloy is stronger than a proven bulkhead. You will learn." He inclined his head and moved away, a shadow detaching itself from the light. The formal presentation of gifts began. The Aurelian nobles offered star charts, deeds to asteroid mines, and biomechanical pets that hissed and clicked. When it was Noah's turn, the hall fell utterly silent. He did not have an attendant. He walked forward himself, carrying a small, polished wooden box. He stopped before her, not bowing, but offering a slight incline of his head. "Empress Caliph, I am not a man of wealth, and my world is not one of power. We do not offer deeds to stars." He opened the box. Inside, resting on dark velvet, was not a jewel or a piece of technology. It was an object that looked like a smooth, dark stone, covered in intricate, swirling silver lines. "This is an echo box," he said, "from old Earth. It holds a story. It is the story of the persistent hunter, not a warrior who won by strength or by speed, but a hunter who was tasked with catching the wind. He could not outrun it, he could not trap it, and he could not command it. So, he built a home in a narrow canyon, and he waited. He learned the sound of its approach. He learned to read its moods. He waited so long that the wind grew curious about this quiet, patient man who did not chase it. It came to rest in his canyon, just to see him. And when it was finally still, he learned its name. He held the box out to her. "We are not a people of strength, Empress, but we are a people of patience. We know how to wait." Caliph took the box. It was warm, the wood smooth against her augmented skin. The story was absurd, childish, and yet the whispering in the hall had stopped. Noah's voice, though quiet, had carried a strange authority. He had defined humanity not by its weakness, but by an attribute the O'Reilly had never bothered to cultivate: endurance. It was then that the universe screamed. It was not a sound, but a visual, visceral tearing. The light from the stars in the viewport did not go out. It fractured. The aurora crown shuddered, a deep groan that shook the promenade. "Status," Caliph's voice cut through the gasps. Her personal guard, the Scions, were instantly at her side, their plasma pikes igniting. The main view screen, now slave to the bridge, flickered. "Bridge, report." The voice of the ship's acting commander, Ama Sorel, came back, tight with static. "Empress, we are blind. All sensors are opaque. We have hit a glass squall." A murmur of genuine fear went through the crowd. A glass squall was a rogue nanoparticle phenomenon, a cloud of hyper-reflective, self-replicating crystal shards that could scour a ship's hull to slag and, more terrifyingly, blind every sensor in a fleet. It was a ghost story used to frighten new ensigns. "All ships, defensive formation. Raise particle shields to maximum," Caliph commanded, moving toward the command console. "Iraq, assemble the conclave. I want a damage report in 5 minutes." Noah had been jostled back, his face pale. He looked terrified. He was human, after all. Then the second alarm blared. This one was not a shipwide warning. It was the sharp, piercing tone of an internal breach. "Intruder alert." Ama Sorel's voice was now laced with disbelief. "Cargo Bay Epsilon. We have a hull breach, repeat. Intruders in Epsilon Bay." Caliph froze. Epsilon Bay, that was a cargo hold, 5 kilometers aft and 20 decks down. It held agricultural supplies. And the manifests. Her mind raced. The manifests. Epsilon Bay was where they had stowed the human consort's personal effects. "Sorel, who is it?" "Their transponder is dark, Empress. But the energy signature." "It is the Obsidian Cartel. They are cutting their way toward the mid-levels." Arakjir was at her side. "The Cartel. They strike now, while we are blind and vulnerable. They must be after you. Empress to the spire, we must secure the throne." But Caliph's mind was moving faster. The Cartel was brutal, but not suicidal. They would not attack the flagship of the Imperial fleet just to get to her. It was too risky. The squall was too convenient. The timing. "Sorel," Caliph said, her voice dangerously quiet. "What is the intruder's exact vector? Are they ascending toward the spire?" There was a pause. "Negative, Empress. They are not ascending. They are moving laterally. Their target, Empress. Their target appears to be the consort's assigned quarters. They are ignoring all other objectives. They are trying to find Artisan Heart." The world snapped into a new, horrific focus. They were not here for her. They were here for him. The useless, soft, inefficient human. She turned and her eyes locked with Arakjir's. His face was a mask of perfect, imperial concern. But his eyes were glittering with triumph. This was his move. He had arranged it. He had leaked the ship's manifests. He had coordinated with the cartel. He had used the cover of the glass squall to stage an attack. Not to kill the Empress, but to abduct the human. to prove, in the most spectacular way possible, that this alliance was a liability, that this human was an anchor that would drown them all. And when the consort was taken, when the alliance with Earth crumbled under the humiliation, Arak would be there to seize control of the Crown Mind and stabilize the Imperium. Scions, Caliph roared. To me, secure the consort, all personnel, evacuation protocols to the central armored column. Chaos erupted. The nobles, so placid moments before, surged toward the exits. The Scions formed a perimeter, their pikes humming. 2 of them, titans of gold and white metal, flanked Noah, grabbing his arms. Noah himself seemed frozen, his eyes wide, his knuckles white on the ceramic cup he still held. "This way, artisan," one of the Scions growled, pulling him. "Wait," Noah said. His voice was thin. "Move," the guard commanded, shoving him. Caliph was about to intervene, to snarl at her own guard for their roughness. When Noah spoke again, he was addressing one of his own human attendants, a young woman who was trembling by a pillar. "My apologies," Noah said, his voice strained but polite. "Empress, permission to retrieve my effects." Caliph stared at him. She could not believe what she was hearing. "We are under attack." "Yes," Noah agreed, swallowing. "But my brewing kit, the one with the brass filter and the glass siphon, it is very delicate. It was a gift." One of the Scions actually laughed, a harsh, metallic bark. "The human wants his toys by the crown. He wants his tincture." Caliph felt a wave of pure, cold rage. At Arak, at the cartel. But most of all, at this pathetic, weak man she had been forced to marry. He was going to die, and his last thought was for a cup of coffee. She stalked over to him, her hand raised. She was going to drag him to safety herself, bodily, and let the universe witness his shame. She grabbed his arm. His sleeve was thin. Underneath, his arm was slender, but it was not soft. It was corded with a wiry, dense muscle she had not expected. And his hand, the one not holding the cup, was braced against the bulkhead. She had expected it to be shaking, trembling with fear. But it was not the chaotic, palsied tremor of terror. His hand was vibrating, a tiny, impossibly fast, and perfectly rhythmic oscillation against the metal of the ship. It was not a shake. It was a controlled cadence. He was not afraid. He was processing. He was controlling his breathing, mastering the spike of adrenaline, metering his own biological response. 2 seconds passed. His eyes met hers. The fear was gone. They were sharp, clear, and terrifyingly calm. "If you please, Empress," Noah Hart said, his voice now perfectly level. "The kit is essential." Caliph stared at him, her hand still on his arm, feeling the controlled rhythm of his body, a rhythm that seemed to be matching the very hum of the Aurora Crown itself. "Scions," she said, her own voice suddenly hoarse. "Grant the consort his request. Get his kit. Then get us to the spire." Now, the spire of the Aurora Crown was a place of agonizing, sterile cold. It was the ship's emergency command center, a sphere of hardened armor and hollow emitters, suspended deep within the primary hull. Caliph felt the vibration of the crippled ship not through the deck, but through the starborne throne itself, a low, dissonant hum that spoke of chaos. The glass squall still raged, an impenetrable shroud that had blinded the largest fleet in the quadrant, turning 3,000 warships into 3,000 deaf and sightless targets. "The fleet is scattered," Regent Arakjir announced, his synthesized voice cutting through the tension. He stood at the central tactical tank. Though there was nothing to display but their own ship and a swirling gray vortex of sensor noise. The squall is unprecedented. We are, for all intents and purposes, alone. I am aware of the tactical situation, Regent, Caliph said, her voice tight. She was interfacing with the Crown Mind, trying to feel for the cartel intruders through the ship's internal sensors. But the ancient intelligence felt distant. The attack had been too clean, the timing too perfect. RX presence was a physical weight, an iron glove closing around her authority. Are you, Empress? Arak countered. He turned to the High Conclave, their severe, augmented faces hovering as holograms in the spire. We are besieged. The Obsidian Cartel, our most vicious enemy, is aboard this very ship. And they did not come for the throne. They came for the human. He let the words hang, a poison in the air. This alliance, this marriage, which was meant to demonstrate our reach, has instead painted a target on our back. The human is not a consort. He is bait. He is under my protection, Caliph snapped. Which is more than I can say for the rest of the ship, thanks to your faction's insistence on this route. My faction, Arak's voice feigned surprise. I represent the security of the Crown, and it is that very security I now invoke. He raised his hand, and a new text protocol scrolled across the tactical tank. The Edict of Imperial Preservation, a safeguard established by the First Empress to protect the throne from compromised leadership. Caliph's blood ran cold. Compromised by external attachments, Arak said smoothly. By emotional tethers that override tactical necessity. The edict states that if the Empress's judgment is demonstrably clouded by a personal liability, the High Conclave may vote, by a 2/3 majority, to transfer tactical command to the acting regent until the threat is neutralized. A vote, a coup, wrapped in the silk of legality. You would depose me, Caliph said, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. While we are boarded. I would save us, Arak retorted. You are clearly invested in the human's survival. That is a flaw. A true commander must be willing to sacrifice any peace, including a consort. He looked at the conclave. I move to vote. Shall we jettison the liability, or shall we allow this sentimentality to cripple the flagship? You will do neither. Caliph rose from the throne, her golden enhancements seeming to glow with a cold fury. You have not proven my judgment compromised, Regent. You have only proven your ambition. The conclave members murmured, their holographic forms flickering. They were afraid. Arak was offering them a simple, cruel solution. Caliph was offering them a complicated, uncertain battle. The motion is tabled, one of the older nobles said, but not dismissed. Empress, we are watching. Prove to us this human is not the poison Arak claims. Caliph felt the cage snap shut. She could not fight the cartel without the conclave's support. She could not gain their support while protecting Noah. And she could not abandon Noah without proving Arak right. She was trapped. Meanwhile, the liability in question was in the ship's safest, and most useless, location. The archive bay was on Deck 40, far from any strategic target. It was where data went to be forgotten, a vast, dusty cavern of old physical media, decommissioned server racks, and hard copy manifests. It smelled of ozone, old insulation, and the faint, dry scent of decaying paper. Noah Hart had been escorted here by 4 Imperial Scions, whose gleaming golden armor looked ridiculous in the cramped, poorly lit aisles. His essential coffee kit sat on a rusty maintenance cart beside him. Caliph had decreed to be protected, but he was not to cumber the command crews. He was, in effect, in storage. He was sitting on a low crate, seemingly calm, watching a young Aurelian apprentice as a nervous youth, named Jevon, try and fail to repair a flickering light panel. "You are applying too much pressure," Noah said quietly. Jevon jumped, startled. "Artisan, consort. My apologies. The flux capacitor is unstable." "It is not the capacitor," Noah said. He stood, walked over, and gently touched the panel. "It is the connection. The housing is warped. See?" He pointed. "You are trying to force the new part to fit the old, broken shape. You must shape the connection first." The Scion guards watched, their helmeted faces unreadable, but their posture radiating boredom and disdain. It was then that the air began to thin. It was subtle at first. A metallic tang to the recycled oxygen, a slight pressure in the ears, then a low, chirping alarm began to sound from a wall monitor. The icon was a red triangle life support. "What is that?" the lead Scion demanded, his hand moving to his plasma pike. Jevon's face went pale, his bioluminescent skin flickering. "The main ventilation feed. It is offline. Sub-level compressors are failing. We are losing atmospheric integrity." The Scion's armor would protect them, but the unaugmented technicians and Noah would be unconscious in 30 minutes, dead in an hour. "Reroute it!" the Scion barked at Jevon. "I am trying," the apprentice cried, his hands flying over a terminal. "The system is not responding. The attack must have damaged the primary conduit." Noah was not watching the terminal. He was walking along the wall, his head tilted, listening. He stopped at a large, humming ventilation unit, an ancient model marked Scrubber Unit 7. He placed his hand on its side. "It is not the conduit," Noah said. "Human, stay back," the Scion warned. "This unit is choking." Noah ignored him, his eyes tracing the flow meters. "The sensors are fried. The system thinks the air on this deck is 100% pure, so the blowers are shut down. It is suffocating us because it thinks we are fine." He opened a side panel, revealing a complex web of wires and crystal relays. Jevon stared at it, lost. "The diagnostic port is melted. I cannot interface." "We do not need to interface," Noah said. He looked around the dusty bay. His eyes landed on a desk piled high with old-fashioned archival supplies. He walked over, picked up a small metal clasp from a box. A paperclip. "Artisan, what are you doing?" the Scion growled, stepping forward. "The sensor is a simple pressure loop. It needs a closed circuit to signal safe," Noah murmured, more to himself than the guard. He bent the paperclip into a U-shape. "I am going to tell it the air is toxic." He jammed the metal clip deep into the sensor relay, bypassing the fried chip. Nothing happened. "It needs a bypass," Jevon whispered, catching on. "The auxiliary pipe is sealed." "Then we make a new one," Noah said. He spotted the maintenance cart and the thin, flexible plastic tube he used for his coffee siphon's cleaning assembly. He grabbed it. In one swift, practiced motion, he jammed the paperclip into the relay and rerouted a small, hissing pneumatic line with the coffee tube, forcing a pressure differential. For a second, there was a horrible, grinding screech. The Scions raised their weapons. Then, with a shuddering groan that shook the floor, the massive internal blowers of Scrubber Unit 7 roared to life. A blast of cold, clean, highly oxygenated air hit them. The chirping alarm on the wall went silent. The red triangle turned green. The bay was silent, save for the hum of the now breathing scrubber. Jevon was staring at Noah, his mouth open. The scions looked at the panel, then at the human, then back at the panel. "By the crown," the lead scion whispered. "He fixed it. With garbage." A moment later, the deck's senior technician ran in, his face masked and panicked. "What happened? All my readings went red, then green." "Jevon, report." Jevon looked at Noah, who was quietly wiping grease from his hands. "Sir," Jevon began. "The consort—" "Your technician." Noah interrupted smoothly, his voice calm and authoritative. "Did remarkable work. He correctly identified a critical sensor loop failure and enacted a physical bypass under extreme pressure. His creative use of adjacent materials was impressive. You should commend him." Noah stepped back, picked up his coffee cup, and returned to his crate. He had just saved the lives of everyone on the deck and had immediately, almost reflexively, given all the credit to the nearest person. The scion guard just watched him, his helmet tilted, in an expression of profound, metallic confusion. Deep in the ship, in a shielded communication node, Arak-Jur was holding his own council. His holographic display was not of the Conclave, but of two far more dangerous entities. The first was the assassin primus of the Obsidian Cartel, his face a mass of scar tissue and twitching silver augments. "Your diversion was imprecise, Regent," the assassin hissed. "The human is in the archive bay, protected by a full scion detail. That was not the arrangement. We were promised a simple extraction." "The situation is fluid," Arak said, his voice cold. "The Empress is more sentimental than anticipated, but she is contained. The glass squall holds. You have time. You will proceed." "My price increases with the difficulty," the assassin warned. "Your price will be paid when the package is delivered," Arak dismissed him. The hologram vanished, replaced by a far stranger image. It was an Aurelian noble, but he was pale, almost translucent, his enhancements a stark, sterile white. He was a member of the Chorus of Null, a fringe philosophical movement within the aristocracy. They were not pirates. They were zealots, who worshipped the crown mind not as a tool, but as a god of pure, cold logic. They believed emotion was a plague, and humanity was its carrier. "The cartel is filth, Arak," the Null priest said, his voice a dispassionate whisper. "They bring noise and chaos. We seek the sacred silence. The integration of the human element is blasphemy. This artisan, he brings unpredictable variables near the starborn throne. And I am removing him," Eric said. "Let the cartel do the dirty work. Let them prove the human is a liability. When he is gone, the Conclave will see my logic. I will take command, and I will purge this chaotic human influence. You will have your silence. The Imperium will have its order. We will be watching, Regent," the Null priest whispered. "The crown mind must be purified. All variables must be solved. All noise must end." The connection died, leaving Arak alone in the dark. He had his network, the brutal cartel, for the physical, the nihilistic chorus for the spiritual, and himself, the political, orchestrating it all of it balanced on the failure of one soft-spoken human. The call came an hour later. Captain Amasorel, the ship's security chief, was not in a good mood. Her ship was blind, boarded, and now she had to personally inspect the safe zone for the Empress's problematic new husband. She found him, not in the dusty stacks, but in a small, cleared-out maintenance alcove. The scions were standing guard, looking deeply unhappy. The source of their unhappiness was clear. The alcove was filled with a rich, dark, alien smell. It was bitter and smoky, yet sweet. Noah Hart was in the center of the alcove, his precious kit assembled. A small, butane flame heated a glass siphon, water bubbling up from a lower chamber. He was grinding small, dark beans in a manual mill. The rhythmic crush, 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 a stark contrast to the hum of the ship. "Artisan heart," Amma said. Her voice, unfiltered by a helmet, was a sharp, no-nonsense alto. "You are causing, disturbances. The atmospheric reports from this deck are anomalous." "Captain Sorrell," Noah greeted her, not looking up from his grinder. "My apologies. The air in the bay was rather flat. I find a complex aroma helps with cognitive function. Would you care for a cup? It is a single origin bean from my home territory. Very good for analyzing security protocols on a long shift," Amma stared. "I do not have time for cognitive aromas. Artisan, the cartel has breached Deck 12. "Deck 12, Noah mused, tapping the ground beans into a filter. "Of course, but that is not where they are going. Is it?" Amma stiffened. "And what would an artisan know of cartel tactics?" "I know systems," Noah said, pouring hot water over the grounds in a slow, steady spiral. The rich smell intensified. "They breached Epsilon Bay. They moved laterally to my old quarters, which were empty. Now they are on Deck 12, making noise." He held a ceramic cup out to her. "It is a performance. They want you to look at Deck 12. Amma found herself taking the cup. It was warm. "A performance." "They are not on Deck 12, Captain. They are using Deck 12. The noise, the firefight. It is to cover their real movement. They are traveling through the old utility conduits, the ones that are not on your sensor grid." He pulled up a schematic on a nearby datapad. One Jevon had left. "You have your primary security teams here, and here, responding to the Deck 12 threat. But this entire sector," he traced a line with his finger, "this network of decommissioned hydropiping and acoustic tunnels is completely dark. It is a blind spot. It runs directly from their breach point to the lower command levels. That is where I would be." Amma looked at the schematic, then at her own tactical display. He was right. There was a massive, undefended corridor running parallel to the firefight. This, Baker, had analyzed and defeated her entire security layout in the time it took to brew a drink. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice quiet. She took a sip. The coffee was strong, bitter, and incredibly complex. "I am an artisan maintainer," Noah said, making his own cup. "My job is not to look at the shiny, new parts of the ship. My job is to maintain the old, forgotten ones. The pipes, the vents, the wires, the spaces between the walls. That is where the ship's real story is written, and it is always where the intruders hide." Amma drained the cup. It was the first clear thought she had in hours. "Scion team," she barked. "Reroute Delta Squad to Maintenance Corridor G4. Now." She looked at Noah. "My thanks, Artisan." "You are welcome, Captain," he said. "Be careful. They are not stupid. They are just loud." Calith came to the archive bay hours later, needing to escape the political poison of the Spire. Eric was circling. The Conclave was wavering, and the cartel was still, inexplicably, the border ship. She needed to see the problem. She needed to understand the man who was either her greatest weakness or something else. She found him with the apprentices. Jevon and 2 other young technicians were gathered around him, not in fear, but in curiosity. He had the full, 3-dimensional schematic of the Aurora Crown's core plumbing displayed on the holotable. "No, look here," Noah was saying, pointing to a massive, pulsing conduit. "The ship's report. He tapped the official data stream. Says this reclamation pipe is at 100% efficiency. It is, Jevon said. The Crown Mind optimizes all systems. The Crown Mind optimizes the report, Noah said gently. It reads the sensor. It does not listen to the pipe. Close your eyes. Jevon, you have worked on this deck for 2 years. What does it sound like at night? Jevon closed his eyes. It hums, a high-frequency cycle. And, Noah prompted, and a thud, Jevon said, remembering. Every 45 seconds, a thud-thud pause. I always assumed it was the recycler. It is, Noah said. It is the sound of a secondary valve sticking. It is not closing cleanly, it is slamming shut. The sensor reads, closed, so the report is clean. But the sound tells you it is under stress. It is wasting energy and will fail in half the time. The sound tells the truth. The report is just an echo. Kalith stood in the shadows, listening. Her entire life, she had ruled by the flawless, logical, mathematical data of the Crown Mind. She had been taught that instinct was chaos, that emotion was noise, and this human, this soft-spoken repairman, was teaching her apprentices to ignore the data and listen to the noise. He was teaching them to be human, his warmth, his patience, his insistence on a truth deeper than data. It was the antithesis of Iraq's cold logic. It was the antithesis of the Aurelian way. And in that moment, Kalith realized this quiet man was more dangerous to her empire than the entire Obsidian cartel. The alarm that saved her from that thought was a new one, a sharp, piercing wail from her personal comm. It was Captain Sorrel. Empress to the Spire. We have a new threat. External. The Spire was in chaos. The new threat was displayed on the main tank, a tiny, flickering red icon. A proximity detection, the tactical officer announced, his voice strained. One of the few hull sensors still functioning in the squall. Empress. We have an attachment. Starboard hull, near the main engines. It is a nanomine. A new, deeper fear settled in the room. A nanomine was not a simple explosive. It was a swarm of microscopic machines, designed to burrow, to eat through the hull, and to detonate inside the ship's heart. Blast it, Arak commanded. Negative, the tactical officer countered. The explosion would breach the engine core. We cannot scrape it. The nanoswarm will infect the tool. We cannot use point defense. The squall is too dense. And we cannot move. We are trapped. Kalith felt the walls close in. This was it. Arak had won. They would die here, blind and helpless. Then, a quiet voice sounded over the Spire's command channel. The channel Kalith had ordered kept open. Empress, a suggestion. It was Noah Hart. Arak spun. The artisan. How dare he speak on this channel? Silence him. He is my consort regent, Kalith snapped, her eyes fixed on the icon. And he is on my ship. Speak, Noah. The mine, Noah's voice was calm, the sound of his breathing steady in her ear. It is a burrowing technology. That means it is crystalline, or metallic-based, and generates immense heat. But to do that, it must have a massive surface area-to-volume ratio. What is this? This muck wizardry, Arak spat. Speak sense, human. It is vulnerable to rapid thermal change, Noah continued, ignoring the regent. Specifically, to crystallization. Empress. What is the ship's largest, most accessible store of non-recycled fresh water? Kalith's mind flashed to the cargo hold. The breach. The agricultural reserve tanks, in Epsilon Bay. They are right next to the starboard hull. Precisely. Noah's voice was still calm, but Caliph could hear the tension in it now. The controlled cadence. If you vent that fresh water, not as a stream, but as a fine mist, directly onto the mine, the vacuum of space will do the work. It will flash freeze. The water molecules will crystallize around the nanoparticles. It will encase the mine in a shell of simple ice, instantly neutralizing its thermal burrowing action. There was a full second of stunned silence in the spire. That, the tactical officer said, his voice full of disbelief, is primitive. It is pre-FTL engineering, but the logic is sound. It is insane, Arak roared. You would spray water on a nanoweapon, lower the particle shields for such a human trick, I forbid it. It is a peasant solution. Caliph looked at Arak, his face a mask of furious, aristocratic pride. Then she thought of Noah, his hand on the pipe. The sound tells the truth. Do it, Caliph said. Empress Eric yelled. Now, she commanded. Tactical, vent the Epsilon tanks. Lower the shield for exactly 2 seconds. On my mark. The ship shuddered as the massive vent ports opened. Mark, Kale Good. A section of the impenetrable particle shield vanished. From the side of the Aurora crown, a vast, silent plume of white mist erupted, slamming into the hull. It instantly vanished, turning into a glittering, expanding cloud of ice crystals that joined the glass squall. The red icon on the tactical display stopped flickering. It turned a solid, stable blue. Report, Caliph breathed. Thermal signature. Gone, the tactical officer whispered, awed. The mine is inert, encased. It worked. The human's muck wizardry worked. Before Caliph could feel a single moment of triumph, Captain Sorrell's voice screamed over the comm, raw with panic. Empress, the vent, they used it. The pressure dropped from the water vent. The cartel used it to blow the secondary bulkhead. They are inside the main conduit. They are... By the crown. They are moving. Fast. Toward the Crown Mine data vault. Arakjir turned slowly to Caliph. His face was no longer angry. It was victorious. Your muck wizardry has just given them a superhighway to the ship's brain, Empress. Your human has doomed us all. In the archive bay, the alarms were deafening. The scions were grabbing Noah, pulling him toward an armored locker. Move, consort. We are compromised. But Noah was not moving. He was standing, frozen, in front of the holotable. He was staring at the three-dimensional schematic of the ship's core, the one he had been using to teach the apprentices. The cartel was in the main water conduit. He traced their path, a thick, obvious red line, moving toward the data vault. He saw the security teams, green icons, racing to intercept, all noise, all chaos. But Noah was not looking at the red lines. He was looking at the empty spaces. His mind, trained to see systems and patterns, was not seeing pipes. He was seeing a symphony. The main conduits were the brass section, loud, obvious. The power lines were the percussion, a heavy, driving rhythm. The comms lines were the strings, fast and complex. But the most important part of music is not the notes. It is the rests, the silence. He saw it. A thin, dark gap running between the water conduit and the power grid. A line on the schematic that was blank, marked only as decommissioned acoustic channeling. It was a utility chase, built into the original hull, designed centuries ago to carry the sound of the Crown Mine's first activation to the architects. It was obsolete. It was unmonitored. It was silent. It was a rest in the ship's music, and it ran directly from the back wall of the archive bay to a sub-level maintenance hatch just beneath the Crown Mine data vault. His eyes widened. He traced the line. his finger hovering over the architect's signature on the ancient schematic. An Aurelian rune, archaic and formal. But next to it, almost invisible, was a second notation, a human symbol, a small, stylized waveform, a maker's mark he had seen only once before. On the echo box he had given Kalith. He stared at the schematic, the blood draining from his face. He recognized the design. He recognized the signature. He was not just a passenger on this ship. He was an heir to its design. And he knew, suddenly, exactly where the intruders were, and exactly how to stop them. The alarms from the Spire's tactical tank were a piercing, physical pain. A dozen red icons, representing the Obsidian cartel kill squads, were slicing through the Aurora Crown's primary conduits, moving with terrifying, coordinated speed. "This is your fault," Arakshir's voice was no longer smooth. It was a triumphant snarl. He rounded on Kalith, his iron augments making him seem like a headsman. "You and your humans trick. You gave them the very access they needed. The water vent was a Trojan horse." The holographic members of the High Conclave flickered with panic. Arak was right. The timing was perfect. Noah's clever, primitive solution had been turned against them. "You have failed, Empress," Arak pressed, his voice rising, appealing to the Conclave. "You have allowed sentiment to blind you. This creature has doomed this ship. He has doomed the Crown Mind. I invoke the Edict of Imperial Preservation. I demand a vote. The vote is to secure the ship. Arak, not your ambition," Kalith shot back. But her voice wavered. Doubt was a poison, and it was spreading fast. "Empress." It was Captain Amma Sorel, her voice sharp over the comm. "New contact. They are not just in the conduits. They are in the Spire's ventilation shafts. They are coming. For you." As she spoke, the reinforced ceiling of the Spire exploded. Shrapnel and armor plating rained down. 3 massive figures in the charcoal gray and silver armor of the Obsidian Cartel dropped into the command center. They landed in a crouch, their augmented limbs absorbing the impact, their weapons already firing. They were not human. They were monsters, their bodies swollen with crude, powerful celerity implants, their faces hidden behind scarred, multi-lensed helms. Kalith's scions, her golden armored personal guard, instantly formed a defensive perimeter around her. "To the Empress," their leader roared, igniting his plasma pike. But the cartel troopers ignored him. They ignored the Conclave's holographic projections. They ignored Regent Arakshir, who was, for the first time, scrambling for cover. They ignored Kalith herself. Their eyes, a cluster of red optical sensors, swiveled and locked onto the back of the room, near the shielded entrance where her consort stood, his damned coffee kit on a cart beside him. With a unified, mechanical grunt, all 3 intruders raised their weapons and charged, not at the Empress on her throne, but at the human standing by the wall. The realization hit Kalith with the force of a plasma bolt. This was not a feint to get her. This was not a feint to get the Crown Mind. This entire, massive, suicidal assault on the flagship was a capture mission. For him, why was a simple human repairman worth this protect the consort? Kalith roared, her voice cracking the disciplined air. "Protect Noah Hart. All forces converge on him." Her scions, confused but obedient, reformed their line, intercepting the charge. The Spire erupted into a confined, brutal firefight. Plasma bolts seared the bulkheads, and the sharp, metallic clang of augmented fist on biomechanical armor echoed in the small space. Arakshir pulled himself up from behind the tactical tank, his face a mask of pure, incandescent fury. His plan had not just failed, It had been irrelevant. The human was not bait. He was the prize. "This is madness," Arik spat, his voice trembling with rage, as he watched two of Kaleth's finest guards get torn apart. "You are sacrificing the Imperial Scions for a cup of coffee." The room was chaos. Alarms blared, weapons fired, and men screamed. In the center of it, Noah Hart stood, his back to the wall, his eyes tracking the impossible speed of the cartel assassins. He had not moved. He had not flinched. He simply watched, his breathing steady, his face pale. When Arak screamed his insult, Noah turned his head. His gaze was calm, almost academic. He looked at the regent, then at the battle, then at his coffee kit. "It depends on the bean," he said, his quiet voice cutting through the din like a surgical knife. Arak stopped, dumbfounded. One of the scions, in the middle of parrying a blow, let out a choked, barking laugh before driving his pike through a cartel trooper's chest. The entire room, for one frozen half-second, stared at the human who had just delivered a deadpan barista joke in the middle of a death match. It was the sound of the third trooper's rifle that broke the spell. It was not a plasma weapon. It was an old-fashioned, human-made kinetic slug thrower. The whump crack of the bullets was a sound Noah had not heard in 10 years, but it was a sound he would never, ever forget. The world dissolved. He was not on the Aurora Crown. He was on Xylos 7. The sky was orange with the smoke of the burning human outpost. He was running, his lungs on fire. He was an artisan maintainer then, too. He fixed their water purifiers. He fixed their radios. He could not fix this. The whump crack came again. He saw them, the Obsidian Cartel, in the same scarred armor, walking through the burning tents. He was hiding, a coward, behind a melted hydroponics tank. He saw his sister, Alara. She was not running. She was trying to drag a wounded outpost defender to cover. The cartel trooper did not even pause. He raised his rifle. Whoomp crack. Alara fell. Noah remembered the silence, the ringing in his ears. He had waited, hidden in the ashes, for 3 full days, long after the cartel had gone. He had finally crept out, his hands shaking. He had found her, in her hand. She had been clutching a letter for him, which she had not had time to deliver. He had taken it, his hands, covered in her blood and the ash of his home, had held the unopened letter. He was holding that letter now. No, he was holding the brass handle of his coffee grinder. His knuckles were white. His entire body was shaking with a cold, distilled rage so potent it threatened to tear him apart. He looked at the last cartel trooper, who was now grappling with the scion leader. The assassin's helmet was a newer model, but the insignia on his shoulder. The 3 silver slashes. It was the same unit, a 10-year-old vendetta, a promise of revenge he had buried under a mountain of patience and ritual, now roared to the surface. He wanted to kill this creature. He wanted to dismantle him, piece by piece, as he would a broken machine. He took a breath. He forced the rage down. He contained it. He let it turn from a fire into a lens. "Empress," he said, his voice sharp. Kaleth was at his side, her personal plasma pistol in hand. "What?" "They are using thermal sensors," Noah said, pointing to the troopers' multi-lensed helms. "The smoke and chaos is cover for them. We have to blind them." How Noah grabbed his kit. "We have to leave, and now, not the exit, the maintenance shafts." "Jevon." "That apprentice who was with me, is he here, in the hallway?" Ama Sorrel's voice barked. She had just arrived, her security team in tow. "Artisan, this is a war zone. not a cafe. Exactly, Noah said. He grabbed his butane burner, his siphon, and a bag of CO2 cleaning cartridges from the cart. Get me to the junction. I will make us ghosts. The junction was a claustrophobic metal maze of pipes and cabling. Captain Amos Sorel's team had set up a perimeter, but they were pinned down. Up ahead, the corridor was a kill zone. Cartel trap, Amma reported, her face grim. Pressure plates, laser tripwires, and a thermal sweep. Anything that moves, or is warmer than the bulkhead, is vaporized. We are stuck. Jevon. The young apprentice was trembling. We cannot go back, Captain. They are right behind us. We are not going back, Noah said. He was already working. He handed Jevon a large CO2 fire suppression canister from the wall. Hold this. Captain, give me 2 minutes. Then provide covering fire at exactly this spot. He pointed to a small, grated vent near the ceiling. What are you doing? Kalith demanded. She was standing guard, her pistol aimed down the dark corridor. Making a cloud, Noah said. He had his butane burner lit. He was not heating water. He was heating the brass nozzle of the CO2 canister, a dangerous, reckless move. He had his water siphon attached to it, filled with a mixture of water and cleaning solvent. He is creating a low-pressure atomizer, Jevon whispered, his eyes wide. He is going to create a supercooled, high-humidity fog. By the crown. That is brilliant. It is a bomb if you do it wrong, Amma growled. It is all about the rhythm, Noah said. Now, Jevon. Jevon cracked the canister. A hissing cloud of CO2 shot out. Noah, his hands steady, applied the flame, not to the gas, but to the siphon, injecting a microburst of water into the expanding, freezing cloud. It did not create smoke. It created a thick, rolling, tepid fog. It was not hot. It was not cold. It was a cloud of ambient, human temperature mist. Now. Captain, Noah yelled. Amma fired. Her shot hit the vent, just as the fog billowed out, drawn by the ship's ventilation. In seconds, the entire corridor was filled with a dense, gray, opaque cloud. The cartel's automated guns began firing wildly. They were completely, utterly blind. The thermal sensors could only see a uniform, 37 degrees Celsius wall of mist. Go, Noah said, grabbing Kalith's arm. Move slowly. No sudden movements. Stay close. Jevon, right behind me. He led them into the fog. Kalith felt her augments scream. Her tactical display was useless, a sheet of gray. She was blind. I am blind, she hissed. Good. Noah's voice came from right beside her. Stop trying to see. Listen. She heard it. A faint, rhythmic click. Click. Click, click. Pause. It is the sensor sweep, Noah whispered. They have a sound sensor as a backup. It sweeps. Then it listens for the echo. Move on the pause. Follow me. 1, 2, 3. Move. He led them. A small train of ghosts, through the fog. They stepped over laser wires they could not see. They moved in perfect, rhythmic silence, stepping only in the acoustic shadow of the enemy's own defense. Kalith, Empress of the Aurelian Imperium, had never been more terrified, or more focused, in her entire life. She was trusting her life to a human's sense of rhythm. They cleared the trap. They were in an older part of the ship, a deep, structural arterieway. The air was cold, and the only light came from aging emergency strips. My team will hold them at the junction, Amos Sorel said, her voice rough with a new respect. Where to? Artisan, and this time. I request the full truth. Noah did not answer immediately. He had stopped, his hand resting on a massive, load-bearing beam. This beam, it feels wrong. It is a structural support, artisan, Amma said, exasperated. It is not a coffee maker. It is fine. No, Noah insisted. He ran his hands over the cold metal, his fingers tracing patterns in the ancient dust. It is hollow. Caliph and Amma exchanged a glance. Before they could stop him, Noah had braced himself and shoved a section of the beam. It did not move. See, Amma said. Noah pressed his ear to the metal. He tapped it. A high, clear ring. He tapped it again, lower down. A dull, low thud. It is not a beam, Noah whispered. It is a housing. He ran his fingers along the seam he had found. His fingers, long and thin, probed a tiny, almost invisible recess. He found a catch. He looked back at Caliph. Cover me. He applied pressure. There was a click. He twisted his hand, his fingers moving in a pattern Caliph did not recognize. A sequence. A lock. With a groan of metal that had not moved in centuries, a small, circular disc popped out of the beam. It was not a control panel. It was a solid piece of dark, polished metal, the size of his palm, etched with two interlocking symbols. One was the spiral galaxy of the Aurelian Imperium. The other was the waveform of old Earth. The Covenant Key, Caliph breathed, her hand flying to her throat. It was a myth, a legend from the first Empress's time, when the original human Aurelian treaty was signed, a symbol of the First Alliance. Noah picked it up. The metal was cold, heavy. He said nothing. He just looked at it, his face unreadable. And then, as Amma and Caliph watched, he slipped it into his pocket. Artisan. Consort. Jevon stammered from the rear. We have a problem. A single cartel trooper, his armor scorched, had gotten through the fog. He was slumped in a doorway, apparently wounded. Amma raised her rifle. Stay back, human. I will handle this. No, Noah said. He is bait. As he spoke, a second trooper dropped from a ceiling vent behind Amma. The captain was caught. Before the trooper's feet even hit the deck, Noah moved. He did not charge. He did not yell. He crossed the 10 feet between them in 3 silent, bounding steps. The trooper was raising his plasma rifle, but Noah was already inside his guard. It was not a fight. It was a dismantling. Noah's left hand did not go for the weapon. It slapped the trooper's helmet. A jarring, open-palmed blow that snapped the soldier's head back and momentarily scrambled his optics. Noah's right hand, held stiff and flat, jabbed into the unarmored gap at the trooper's elbow, hyper-extending the arm and forcing him to drop the rifle. As the trooper grunted, Noah pivoted. He did not use his fist. He used his elbow, a hard, sharp blow to the nerve cluster where the neck met the shoulder. The trooper's entire body went rigid with a sudden, agonizing paralysis. He began to fall. Noah caught him, lowered him to the ground gently, and used a zip tie from his own maintenance kit to bind the man's hands. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. It was brutal. It was silent. It was efficient. And it was utterly terrifying. Amma Sorel, a decorated combat veteran, lowered her rifle. She was staring at Noah, her mouth slightly open. That, she said, her voice shaking with a mix of awe and suspicion, was a CQR, close quarters repurposing. That is a human special operations technique. Designation conductor's strike. It is not taught to civilians. It is not taught to anyone outside the Ghost Brigades. She took a step toward him. Who are you? I am an artisan maintainer, Noah said, his voice quiet. He looked at the bound, unconscious trooper. I fix things that are broken. The tension was so thick, Caliph could barely breathe. Before she could demand an answer, a new voice echoed down the corridor. He is the one who carries the low note. The assassin Primus stood at the end of the hall, blocking their path. He was not wearing a helmet. His face was a horrifying mosaic of scar tissue and gleaming silver augments. And he was holding a small, dark object. A null seed trigger. Empress, he said, bowing slightly to Caliph. But his eyes, cold and dead, were locked on Noah. You protect the variable. A foolish equation. Caliph stepped in front of Noah, her pistol raised. You have failed, assassin. My ship is not yours. You will not touch the crown mind. The assassin Primus laughed. It was a dry, scraping sound, like sand on metal. The crown mind. The crown mind is just a machine. A very loud, very boring machine. We are not here for the machine. We are here for the music. He took a step closer. Your throne will fall silent, Empress. It will fall silent when the one who carries the low note is erased. He was talking about Noah. Caliph felt a cold dread she had not felt before. He was not a pirate. He was a zealot. The assassin looked at Noah. You should have stayed in the ashes, little ghost. He raised the trigger. No, Caliph lunged, but the assassin was not aiming at them. He clicked the trigger. Caliph expected an explosion. She got silence. For half a second, the ship's entire power grid fluctuated. Then, a new alarm blared. Warning! The ship's synthesized voice announced. Secondary engine coil destabilizing. Feedback loop in progress. Containment failure in 45 seconds. A bulkhead behind the assassin blew open. Not with fire, but with a concussive force that threw him against the wall. A blast of pure, superheated steam, invisible and deadly, vented from a ruptured reaction control pipe. It was aimed directly at Caliph. No! Noah roared. He moved faster than she had ever seen him move. He grabbed her by the waist, not gently, but with a brutal, life-saving force, and threw her behind a solid bulkhead. She slammed into the wall. The air knocked from her lungs. She looked up, horrified. Noah had not followed. He was standing, his back to her, facing the torrent of invisible, superheated steam. He was not looking at the assassin. He was looking at the ruptured pipe. He saw the manual override valve. It was a large, iron wheel, already glowing a dull, cherry red. Amma was screaming. Consort, no, it will kill you. Noah ignored her. He took a breath. And then he walked into the steam. Caliph watched, speechless, as he put his hands, his bare, soft, human hands, onto the red-hot valve. The sound of his flesh searing, a high-pitched sizzle and a hiss of vaporizing sweat, was the most sickening sound she had ever heard. He did not scream. He threw his entire body weight into it, trying to turn the massive wheel. It was stuck. The pressure was too high. He pushed again, a full, body-shuddering agony, and it still did not move. He stopped. He closed his eyes. He let go with one hand, his ruined, smoking left hand, and braced it on the wall. He tilted his head, as if listening. The ship was shuddering in a broken, violent rhythm. Thud. Thud, thud. Thud. The feedback loop, Jevon whispered, his face ashen. He is listening to it, Noah was muttering. Caliph could just hear him. No. The rhythm is wrong. Too fast. He put his left hand back on the wheel. He ignored the fresh searing of his own flesh, and he began to turn it, but not in a smooth motion. He was turning it in a specific, broken counter-rhythm. 4. Close, he gasped, turning it a quarter. 1. Hold. 8. Twist. 6. Release. He was fighting the engine. He was not just closing a valve. He was counter-pulsing the feedback loop, using the wheel to manually interrupt the pressure spikes. He was conducting a symphony of chaos. His hands, his baton, his own body the instrument. He was imposing his will, his rhythm, on a machine that was tearing itself apart. The violent thud, thud, thud began to slow. The shudders became less violent. The roar of the steam began to die. With one final, agonized push, Noah sealed the valve. The steam cut off. The corridor was silent, save for the dripping of condensation. Noah Hart stood, frozen for 1 second. Then, like a puppet with its strings cut, he slumped, unconscious, to the deck, his hands a ruin of charred, unrecognizable flesh. "Noah!" Caliph screamed, scrambling to his side. Amma, Sorel, and Jevon were right behind her. The assassin Primus was gone, vanished in the chaos. Caliph cradled Noah's head in her lap. "His hands! His hands! Get a medical team!" Noah's eyes fluttered open. He was pale, in shock, but his eyes were clear. He looked at her. "The assassin!" he gasped, his voice a dry rasp. He was not trying to kill the crown mind. He was trying to tune it. He was using the wrong tempo. He looked at his own ruined hands, a flicker of dark, terrible understanding in his eyes. "Caliph," he whispered, his voice urgent. "I have to get to the data vault. I think I am the only one who knows how to play." The spire was a ruin of shattered displays and seared metal. The air was thick with the ozone of a plasma fight, and the bitter, chemical smell of ruptured conduits. Caliph was on her knees, her hands braced on Noah's chest. His breathing was shallow, his eyes closed in agony. Get the synth skin." Jevon, the young apprentice, was yelling, his voice cracking. He ripped open a medkit from the bulkhead. "Captain, I need pressure." Amma, Sorel, her face a mask of grim duty, was already pressing her armored gauntlet against a spurting pipe, diverting a spray of coolant. "Talk to me. Empress, what is the status of the Aurora?" Caliph ignored her. She was looking at Noah's hands. They were gone. The flesh had been cooked, blackened, and split to the bone. "He is not a soldier," she whispered, her voice choking. "He is an artisan. What has he done?" "He saved us," Jevon said, his own hands shaking as he sprayed a thick, white, foaming gel onto the ruin of Noah's. The gel hissed, sealing the wounds in a sterile, agonizing cocoon. "It is a field nerve block. It will stop the pain. For a while." As the gel hardened, Noah's body untensed. He let out a long, shuddering sigh. "Empress." Amma's voice was iron. "The spire is compromised. My teams report the cartel used the engine pulse as a diversion. They have bypassed the lower command decks. They are in the spinal vault." Caliph stood, her own hands clenched. The spinal vault. It was not just a data hub. It was the physical, synaptic core of the crown mind, the ship's soul. "Arak!" she snarled. "Get me, Arak!" The regent's face appeared on a cracked, auxiliary monitor. He was not in the spire. He was in the armored secondary bridge, and he was not afraid. He looked vindicated. "Empress," he said, his voice cold. "Your consort has crippled this ship. His heroics have given the cartel free rein. The Crown Mind is now compromised. As acting regent, I have no choice but to declare this a failed command." "You will declare nothing," Calith roared. "I already have," Arak said. A new icon appeared on the screen, the crest of the High Conclave. "The Conclave is in emergency session. They are wavering, Empress. They see only what I see, a leader who has sacrificed her ship for a human." Calith felt the trap's final teeth. She was locked out. The cartel was in the ship's brain. Her court was abandoning her. She was an empress with no empire, a captain with no ship. She was, for the first time in her life, utterly alone. "No," the voice was a dry rasp. "Dry." Noah Hart was sitting up, his hands held in front of him, now encased in white, featureless cocoons of hardened medgel. He looked at them, not with horror, but with a detached, analytical curiosity. "You are not alone, Empress," he said. He got to his feet, his legs unsteady. "But you are trapped, and so is the cartel. Artisan, you are grievously wounded," Amma said, her voice softening for the first time. "You need to be in stasis." "I need a tactical display," Noah said. His eyes, clear and burning with a cold light, locked onto Calith's. "They are in the vault. That is a mistake. It is a box with only one door." "They will be planting a null seed," Jevin whispered, horrified. "They will silence the Crown Mind, permanently." "Then we have to be faster than they are," Noah said. He looked at Calith. There was no trace of the fumbling, charming artisan. This was the man who had walked into superheated steam. This was the man who had dismantled a special ops soldier. "Empress," he said, his voice quiet but commanding. "I am an artisan maintainer. This ship is my artifact. I know its flaws. I know its music. Give me your technical team. Give me Captain Sorrell's authority for 5 minutes." Calith stared at him, at his bandaged hands, at the impossible, cold certainty in his eyes. Arak was waiting for her to fail. The Conclave was waiting for her to break. The cartel was waiting for her to be a victim. This was not weakness. This was the persistent hunter. It was the end of all pretense. It was the end of politics. It was a choice. "Captain Sorrell," Calith said, her voice ringing with a new, hard-won clarity. "Until further notice, you and your strike team report directly to the artisan consort. His word is mine. His command is law. Take back my ship." Amma Sorrell, a veteran of 100 battles, looked at the Empress, then at the bandaged, unassuming human. She did not salute. She simply nodded. "Jevin, get the consort what he needs. What are your orders?" Artisan Arak's face on the monitor was a mask of pure, silent fury. He did not speak. He simply watched, his eyes promising a new, more terrible revenge. The screen went blank. "We move," Noah said. "To the primary maintenance hub, Deck 50. Now." The hub was a vast, greasy chamber, smelling of ozone and metal. "They have sealed the vault," Amma reported, her team sweeping the perimeter. "Heavy armor on the main door. They are digging in. We cannot breach it in time." "We are not going to breach it," Noah said. He pointed to his coffee kit, which Jevin had faithfully wheeled on the cart. "Open that, the largest bag." Jevin, confused, ripped open a kilogram bag of dark roast coffee beans. "Sir." "Not the beans, the grounds," Noah said. "The ones from the spire? I need them." Jevin produced the bag of used wet grounds from the siphon. "On the floor," Noah commanded. "Spread them out." Jevin dumped the dark, sludgy mess onto the clean, white deck. The team stared. Noah crouched. He could not use his fingers. He picked up a discarded spanner, holding it in the clumsy, bandaged grip of his right hand. He began to draw in the coffee grounds, his movements stiff but precise. He was not drawing a map. He was drawing a circuit. "This," he said, drawing a large circle, "is the spinal vault. This," he drew a thick line, "is the main door where Captain Sorrell's team is. It is a choke point. A forte, loud, obvious, and stupid." He looked up, his eyes finding Amma. "We are not going to play their note. We are going to play our own. The vault is a reinforced box, but it is not isolated. It must breathe. It has ventilation, and it has coolant." He drew two new, thin lines, one from above, one from below. "Jevon, the primary atmospheric scrubbers. Can you access the pressure controls?" "Yes, sir." Jevon was at a terminal. "I can..." "Good. I want you to triple the oxygen pressure in that loop, but only in the loop. Vent the excess into the auxiliary tanks. You are not trying to flood them. You are trying to create a sound, a high-frequency, ultrasonic shriek that will overload their comms and audio sensors. I want them deaf." Jevon's eyes went wide. That is possible. It will burn out the conduit, but it is possible." "Burn it," Noah said. "Captain Sorrell, the liquid coolant pipes. They run under the vault's floor, correct, to cool the processors?" "Correct," Amma said, her eyes fixed on the coffee map. "What happens if you vent that coolant, not into the system, but into the unpressurized subfloor at the same time that Jevon hits the pressure?" Amma's grim face broke into a terrible smile. "Flash freeze. The floor plating of the vault will drop to 50 below in seconds. Anyone standing on it will have their boots and their feet frozen to the deck." "They will be deaf," Noah said, drawing a new line. "They will be blind, because the ultrasonic resonance will scramble their optics, and they will be trapped, frozen to the floor." "But they will still be in the vault," Amma countered, "arming the seed." "Which brings us," Noah said, his voice dropping, "to the pianissimo, the softest note, the helm gate." He pointed with the spanner. "Between the coolant pipes and the ventilation, there is a third, dormant system, the emergency fire suppression system, a foam-based deluge. It is designed to activate after a hull breach. We will create the breach. You will use a single, shaped charge on the weakest part of the vault, the old recycling duct. The pressure change will trigger the deluge. The foam will fill the room, but the only exit for that much pressure, the path of least resistance, will be the main door, which they have sealed. They will have two choices: suffocate in fire suppression foam, or open the one door they were trying to keep shut." He looked up at the team. "They will open the door, and when they do, they will run right into your team, Captain, waiting for them at Helm Gate." It was silent. Jevon was staring at Noah as if he were a god. Amma Sorrell was just nodding. "There is one more thing," Noah said. He looked at the cart. "I need that fire extinguisher and the largest, cleanest air filter you can find." "Why?" Amma asked. "Because," Noah said, his bandaged hands beginning to rig the two items together with a piece of hose. "They are not stupid. They will have one guard with clean sensors, a conductor who is not on the same system. We have to blind him. We will force the CO2 from the extinguisher through the fine mesh filter. It will create a massive, particle-charged static cloud, an ion storm. It will blind their last set of eyes right before they hit your guns." "My gods," Amma whispered. "It is a concerto of violence." "It is a system," Noah said. Now, let's play. The assault was a masterpiece of silent, terrible precision. Kalith watched from the command hub, her heart hammering. Jevon! Now! Noah's voice. On her screen, she saw the pressure in the ventilation conduit spike. She could not hear the sound, but she saw the cartel troopers inside the vault, tiny red icons on the tactical display stumble. Their comms went dead. Captain Sorrell. Now. The coolant flooded the subfloor. The temperature in the vault plunged. Two of the red icons stopped moving entirely, frozen in place. The charge... Now! A small explosion rocked the ductwork. The fire suppression system triggered. A blue icon, representing the foam, began to fill the vault. The remaining red icons, panicked, chaotic, scrambled toward the main door. They are opening it! Amma's voice yelled from the corridor. They are at the gate. Jevon, ion shower now, Noah commanded. The custom-rigged extinguisher flooded the Helm Gate corridor with a glittering, static-charged cloud. Fire! Amma roared. The sound of plasma fire was a deafening roar. Kalith watched, says one by one. The red icons vanished. It was over in 10 seconds. Vault is clear, Amma reported, her voice breathless. Wait. Negative. I have one contact. Still inside. It is. The assassin Primus. He has locked himself in. The Null Seed, Noah said, his voice grim. He was already moving. He is arming it manually. Noah. No, Kalith yelled, running after him, her pistol raised. You are not a soldier. No, Noah said, not stopping. I am a repairman, and he is breaking my ship. They found him in the spinal vault. The room was a frozen, foam-filled nightmare. The assassin Primus was standing on an insulated platform, his hands working at a large, pulsating device that had been grafted onto the central core of the crown mind. It was a metal, pulsating heart, and it was singing a low, discordant, 7-beat rhythm that made Kalith's teeth ache. Thump, 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 thump. Too late. Empress, the Primus hissed, not looking up. The song is almost set. The crown mind will be silent. The noise of emotion will finally end. Your pet ghost arrived just in time to hear the finale. Kalith raised her pistol, but the Primus was shielded by the device itself. A single shot would hit the crown mind. He is right, Noah whispered. He was looking at the device, his head tilted. It is a rhythm. He is desynchronizing the crown mind's harmonic. He is forcing a new tempo onto it. If that loop completes, it will shatter. Then stop him, Kalith said. I am, Noah said. He pointed to a small, plasma welding torch on a nearby rack. Jevon, give me that. Noah, your hands. Kalith pleaded. My hands are fine, he lied. He gripped the torch, his bandaged hands clumsy, but his grip absolute. Kalith, I need a distraction. I need 4 beats. Kalith looked at him, then at the Primus. She understood. She did not fire her pistol. She holstered it. You speak of silence, Kalith said, her voice clear and strong. But you are just noise. From the golden, biomechanical gauntlet on her right arm, a thin, superheated blade of pale light extended, humming with power. And I am tired of listening to you. She lunged. It was the duet Kalith had been born for. She was a whirlwind of gold and light. Her biomechanic blade, a seamless extension of her will. The assassin Primus was forced to defend himself, drawing his own energy daggers. He was fast, but she was stronger, her every move augmented by the throne tech that ran in her veins. but a single cartel trooper. One Caliph had missed, rose from the foam. He had been playing dead. He raised his rifle, aiming not at the Empress, but at the bandaged man with the torch. He never fired. Noah, his eyes still locked on the pulsing null seed, did not even turn his head. He had heard the man's armor scrape against the frozen deck. As the trooper raised his rifle, Noah took one step back, his left elbow coming up in a short, brutal arc that connected with the man's throat. It was the conductor's strike Amma had seen before. A single, practical, horrifyingly efficient thud. The trooper crumpled, his rifle clattering. Amma Sorel, who had just entered the vault, saw the entire exchange. She raised her own rifle, covering the rear, her face a mask of stone. She stepped over to Noah, who was now studying the null seed, ignoring the Empress's beautiful, deadly fight. "You are not weak," Amma whispered, her voice rough. Noah's face was pale, slick with sweat from the pain of his hands. He did not look at her. His eyes were counting thump, 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 thump. "I am only weak," he gasped, "when I choose not to hurt anyone." He saw it. The power bridge. A thick, armored cable that was pulsing with the false, 7-beat rhythm. "Caliph," he yelled. "Now pin him!" Caliph heard him. With a roar, she abandoned defense and went on a pure, suicidal offensive, her blade a blur, forcing the assassin Primus to parry, locking his blades in a shower of sparks. 4, 5, 6. Noah counted under his breath. He raised the plasma torch, his bandaged hands shaking not from fear, but from the strain of his ruined muscles. He braced his arms. Thump, thump. He waited for the last beat of the loop. The 7. Thump. He jammed the torch down, igniting it. The searing, hot plasma blade sliced through the armored cable, just as the final desynchronizing pulse was about to be sent. The null seed screamed, a high-pitched, electronic wail. The false rhythm stopped. The machine died, its lights flickering out. The assassin Primus looked at his dead machine. He looked at Caliph, who was poised to strike. He looked at Noah. He did not fight. He smiled, a grotesque pulling of his scarred face. He slammed his fist onto his chest plate. "The song is not over. Ghost." A concussion grenade on his belt detonated. The blast threw Caliph and Amma backward. Smoke and debris filled the chamber. When Caliph staggered to her feet, he was gone, vanished into the ductwork. "He is gone," Caliph said, coughing. "But we are safe." "Are we?" Amma asked. Noah was not celebrating. He was staring at the central core of the crown mind. The null seed was gone, but the ancient machine was not returning to its steady, calm hum. Its internal lights were flickering, erratically, not in pain, Caliph realized. She could feel it through her augments. It was not in pain. It was curious. The lights were pulsing in a new rhythm, a fast, questioning, syncopated beat. Click, click. Click. Pause. Click, light, click. It was a search pattern. Caliph watched as the ship's internal sensors, one by one, bypassed her, bypassed Amma, and focused with a deep, intense, and terrifying curiosity on Noah. The light on the console pulsed, faster and faster, and from inside Noah's pocket, a faint, answering warmth began to glow. The Covenant key, the piece of dark, ancient metal he had taken from the beam, was vibrating, its etched, human waveform glowing with a pale, blue light, pulsing imperfect, answering time to the crown mind's call. The spire was thick with the silent, suffocating tension of a failed coup. Arak-Jir stood on the secondary command dais, his iron augments gleaming. He had not fled. He was, Caliph realized, a fanatic, one who believed so fully in his own righteousness that he saw this entire catastrophe not as his failure, but as her own. "You see," Arak's synthesized voice boomed, addressing the High Conclave, whose holographic faces flickered around the ruined room. "Chaos, death, the crippling of our flagship, the crown mind itself, assaulted by an unknown, alien protocol. This is the fruit of your human alliance, Empress. This is the sentiment I warned you against." He pointed one iron finger at Noah, who stood, pale and sweat-soaked, his bandaged hands held at his side. "This man," Arak continued, his voice resonating with false gravity, "is not a consort. He is a virus. He has triggered a dormant code, bypassed imperial authority, and has placed this entire vessel, and the crown mind itself, in mortal jeopardy. The edict of imperial preservation is clear. I activate it now. I call for the vote. Relieve this compromised Empress of her command." The conclave erupted. Half the members, Eric's conservative faction, immediately flashed their eye sigils. The others, Caliph supporters, were hesitant. They looked at her, then at Noah, their faces etched with a new, terrible doubt. They were wavering. Arak's accusation was potent. Noah had done exactly what he said. "Regent Arak is correct," Noah's voice, though quiet and rough with pain, cut through the din. The entire conclave, and Caliph herself, turned to look at him. "I have interfered," Noah said, taking a single, pained step forward. "I have triggered an unknown protocol, or rather, a forgotten one." He looked at Jevin, who was standing by a functioning console. "Jevin, the item in my pocket, project it, please." A second later, a high-resolution, three-dimensional image of the Covenant key appeared above the tactical tank. The interlocking spirals of the Aurelian galaxy and the human waveform glowed in the dim light. "A trinket," Arak scoffed. "He offers us a human toy." "It is a key," Noah said. "It is the addendum to the first treaty, the article that was lost from your archives. It states that in a moment of existential threat, not to the ship, but to the crown mind itself, a co-access authority is granted." "Co-access to a human preposterous," a noble from Arak's faction snarled. "To the bearer of the low note," Noah said, his voice gaining a strange, resonant authority. "A line of human artisans, tasked by the first Empress's human counterpart, to listen, to maintain the systems, and the ethics, that others had forgotten." As Noah spoke, the very air in the room began to change. The low, dissonant hum of the damaged crown mind, which had been flickering with curiosity, suddenly shifted. It coalesced, rising from a simple vibration into a complex, multi-layered choral sound. Ancient acoustic ports, sealed for centuries, opened in the bulkheads, and the ship began to sing. The song was not just sound. Caliph felt it in her bones, a vibration that perfectly matched the steady, controlled cadence of Noah's breathing. On the main console, the ship's voice, no longer a simple synthesized text reader, but a harmonious chorus of thousands, spoke. Choir access granted, bearer authenticated. Jevin was staring at his console, his face pale with awe. "Empress, that waveform, the one the crown mind is generating, it is a perfect one-to-one match for the story in the echo box. The persistent hunter It it was not a story. It was a password. Caliph looked at Noah, who met her gaze. The warmth, the patience. It had all been real, but it had also been a key, waiting for the lock. A threat, Caliph said, her voice like ice. She turned her full imperial fury on Arakshir. An existential threat to the crown mind. A threat you orchestrated. Regent. Lies. Arak roared. You have no proof. I do. Captain Amma Sorel stepped from the shadows, her rifle aimed not at Arak, but at his personal guard. When the Regent transferred to the secondary bridge, he used a private, high-density channel. I was curious. My teams have been analyzing the data burst he sent just prior to the glass squall. It was encrypted. She pressed a control on her gauntlet. Until now. The spire was filled with Arak's voice, cold, precise, and unmistakable. The cartel will strike at these coordinates. The human is the target. The glass squall will provide ample cover. Ensure the failure is spectacular. The conclave must see the weakness of flesh. The chorus of Null will be pleased. The throne will be purified. The recording echoed in the sudden, tomb-like silence. The eye sigils of Arak's faction vanished, replaced by faces of pale, horrified understanding. Arakshir did not look defeated. He looked furious. He had been outmaneuvered, his perfect, cold logic defeated by a story. Before Caliph could give the order, a new alarm shrieked. Unauthorized craft, launching from Maintenance Bay 70. Jevin yelled. It is the assassin Primus. He is trying to reach the cartel cruiser. He has a guard with him, Amma added, reading her own display. One of my men. No. Wait. That is not one of my men. It is the trooper he took from the medbay. The one who was playing dead. Noah's head snapped up. His eyes, which had been clouded with pain, were suddenly sharp. Which one, Jevin? Show me the feed. A grainy image appeared. The assassin Primus. And a burly, unhelmeted man in cartel armor, dragging a body. That one. Noah's voice was a whisper. The one without the helmet. Caliph saw the man, and then she saw the look on Noah's face. It was not anger. It was a cold, black singularity of recognition. Noah. Caliph, he said, turning to her, his voice devoid of all its warmth. You deal with the Regent. Captain Sorel. Secure this ship. I have to take the trash out. You are in no condition. Caliph started. He is running to the external gantry. Jevin interrupted. He will be in vacuum in 2 minutes. He will escape. No, he will not, Noah said. He looked at Caliph, a silent, desperate plea. Let me finish this. Caliph held his gaze. This was not a request from her consort. This was a demand from her partner. Go, she said. Amma, give him a channel. Jevin, you are his eyes. Go. The external gantry of the Aurora Crown was a skeletal, unpressurized space, open to the void, where the glass squall still glittered like a storm of angry diamonds. The assassin Primus and his guard, the man from Xylo 7, were racing in their light vacuum suits toward a small, docked cartel raider. He is almost there, sir. Jevin's voice crackled in Noah's earcom. Noah had no suit. He stood at the inner airlock, a simple breath mask over his face, his ruined hands braced on the bulkhead. He is not going to make it, Noah said. He closed his eyes. He did not need to see. He could feel it. The choir access was more than a key. It was an instrument. He could feel the hum of the gantry, the resonance of the support struts. the rhythm of the escaping ship. "Ship," he whispered. "Can you hear me?" "We have a resonance problem," the Crown Mine's choral hum answered in his bones. "The primary coolant pipes. In the gantry. Resonate them. G minor. Make them. Sing." Out in the vacuum, the Primus and his guard were leaping the last gap. Suddenly, the massive, meter-thick pipes that formed the gantry's spine began to vibrate. It started as a low thrum, but quickly rose to a high-pitched, physical shriek that was transmitted through the metal of their boots. The assassin Primus staggered, clutching his helmet. His comms flooded with static. His guard was not so lucky. The man from Xylos 7 dropped, his hands over his ears, his helmetless face contorting in agony. "You should not have come back, Primus." Noah's voice broadcast over the gantry's external speakers, amplified by the Crown Mind. It was no longer the voice of an artisan. It was the voice of the ship. "Ghost," the Primus roared, his voice cutting through the static. He raised his weapon. "You were just a tool," Noah's voice echoed, calm and cold. "A blunt instrument for a rack. You failed. Your chorus of null, your obsession with silence. You are just noise, and you are disturbing the peace." The Primus fired. The bolt ricocheted off a newly formed wall of sound, the acoustic resonance so powerful it was creating a physical barrier. He was trapped. Noah, with Jevon's help, had rerouted power. He was not in the gantry. He was in the observation room, watching. He walked to the window, his bandaged hands pressed against the glass. On the other side, not 10 feet away, was the man who had killed his sister. The man was on his knees, his face bloody, his eyes wide with terror. He looked up, and he saw Noah. He recognized him. Noah's entire body was shaking, not with the ship, but with his own human rage. The memory of Alara's hand, the unopened letter, the smell of ash. It was all there. He could see the control for the outer airlock. One button, and justice would be served. He could vent the man into the void, his bandaged hand. A clumsy white cocoon rose toward the control. He looked at his own reflection in the glass. He saw the pale, shaking man, the ghost the Primus had named him, the man who had hidden in the ashes. "Justice isn't counting bodies," he whispered, his voice breaking. He had said it to the man. He had said it to himself. "It is stopping your hand at the right time." He hit the comms button. "You," he said. The man looked up. "You killed her. On Xylos 7, her name. Her name was Alara." The man's face crumpled. I did not know. We were just following orders." "I'm recording this," Noah said, his voice hard as iron, as the ship's internal sensors focused on the man's face. "The entire fleet is watching. Tell them. Tell them what you did." Broken, bleeding, and trapped by a wall of sound, the man from Xylos 7 confessed. He spoke Alara's name. He spoke of the outpost. He spoke of the orders. Noah listened. He let the rage wash through him, and then he let it go. He let it be replaced by a cold, profound and bottomless grief. "Thank you," Noah said. He cut the resonance. "Captain Sorrell, the gantry is secure. I have 2 prisoners for you, and 1 confession." He turned from the window, back in the spire. Arakjir was surrounded. Amma Sorrell's team had him cornered. The Conclave's holograms were screaming, a cacophony of traitor and abomination. "Fools!" Arak roared, his voice breaking with its first true emotion rage. "You think you have won. You think my logic did not account for this if I am silenced. So is the crown. He raised his hand. In it, he held a small, dark device, a dead man's switch. A backup nullseed, Jevon shrieked from his console. It is wired to the heart of the crown mind and to his vital signs if he dies, or if he lets go, the ship dies. Calith froze. Amma froze. The entire spire, the entire ship, held its breath. Calith! Noah's voice, suddenly calm, came over her personal calm. I can feel it. The choir. I can feel the seed's rhythm. It is a simple loop. It is ugly, but it is predictable. What can you do? Calith whispered. Her eyes locked on Arak. Arak's switch is synced to the ship's primary chronometer, to its heartbeat. He is a man of perfect order. After all, he needs that rhythm. I am going to take it away. Noah, what are you? I am going to introduce a rest, Noah said. Hold on. This is going to feel strange. Calith did not have time to ask. From his observation deck, Noah closed his eyes. He reached out with his mind, through the choir, and he felt the pulse of the Aurora crown, the steady, 1-second beat of its chronometer, the thrum of its engines, the pulse of the nullseed, the frantic, terrified spike of Arak's heart. He found the single, unifying rhythm that bound them all, and with the full, choral, screaming power of the crown mind at his command. He stopped it. Ship, he commanded, his voice a whisper and a roar. Full systems stop. All systems. 1. Beat. Now. For 1 second, for one impossible, eternal moment. The Aurora crown died. The lights went out. The artificial gravity vanished. The choral hum stopped. The air ceased to circulate. There was an absolute, terrifying and profound silence. Arak Jir, floating in zero gravity, his face a mask of sudden, pure terror, looked at his dead man's switch. The sync light, which had been a steady green, was blank. The connection was broken. The seed's internal timer, cut off from its guiding rhythm, desynchronized. The ship came back. The lights slammed on. The gravity returned, sending Arak crashing to the deck. The choral hum of the crown mind returned, not in a panic, but in a slow, triumphant, rising chord. Arak, screaming in pure, logical failed rage, hammered the switch. Nothing. It was just a piece of metal. Amma Sorel's boot came down on his wrist, and the sound of his iron-augmented bones snapping was the only sound that followed. Calith stood on the spire's dais, breathing hard. Her ship was alive. Her enemy was beaten. On the main tactical display, the last of the warnings faded. They were replaced by 2 simple, glowing lines of golden Aurelian text. Subject, Calith Orion. Rhythm partner, Noah Hart. The crown mind had sung its new song. It had acknowledged the new bond. Calith, Empress of the Aurelian Imperium, and Noah, the artisan from Earth, were, in the eyes of the most powerful intelligence in the galaxy, no longer just married. They were synchronized. The silence that descended upon the Aurora crown was heavier than any armor. The glass squall, that convenient shroud for Arak's treason, had dissipated as mysteriously as it had arrived, revealing a starfield scarred by the debris of a battle that had been fought more with logic than with plasma. The ship, though wounded, was whole. Its new, choral hum was a deep and steady B-flat, a note of calm authority that resonated in the bones of all who walked its decks. The High Conclave, or what remained of its authority, convened not in the spire, but in the Hall of Edicts, their holographic forms looking small and translucent in the austere chamber. Regent Arakzir was present, not as a hologram, but in person. His iron augments stripped from him, his body clad in the simple gray tunic of a state prisoner. He stood, his back rigid, as Caliph entered. She did not take the starborn throne. She stood on the floor with them, her golden augments gleaming, her presence more powerful than any sigil of office. The Edict of Imperial Preservation has been reviewed. An ancient noble, a woman from the core worlds, announced, her voice trembling. The evidence, presented by Captain Amas Sorel, and the testimony of the Crown Mind itself, is absolute. The charge is high treason. The motion is to strip Regent Arakzir of all titles, honors, and imperial protections, and to remand him to the public tribunal of first principles. Arak said nothing. He simply stared at Caliph, his eyes burning with a cold, undiluted hatred. He was a man of perfect order, and she was the chaos that had undone him. "We vote," Caliph said. Her voice was not a command. It was a statement. One by one, the holograms shimmered, their eye sigils igniting. It was unanimous. Not a single noble, not even those who had supported his conservative faction, dared to stand with him. The political animal had been cut from the herd, and the herd was closing ranks to save itself. The Obsidian Cartel, Caliph continued, as scions, their faces grim, moved to bracket the now powerless Arak, was not merely an enemy. It was a tool, funded and directed by this man. With the public release of his confession, and the confession of the assassin's accomplice, the cartel's political cover is gone. I have issued a fleet-wide directive. We are no longer containing them. We are erasing them. As Arak was marched from the hall, he paused, turning to Caliph one last time. You have broken everything, he rasped, his synthesized voice box having been removed, his real voice thin and reedy. The old ways. The order. Oh, you mistook rigidity for order. Arak, Caliph said, her voice devoid of triumph, only a deep weariness. The ship is strongest when it can flex. You tried to make it brittle, and you were the first to snap. She turned away, leaving him to his fate, and to the roar of the public tribunals that were already broadcasting his face across the Imperium. 2 days later, in the ship's advanced medical bay, Noah Hart was learning to use his hands again. The medbay doctor, a tall, pragmatic Aurelian with kind multifaceted optical sensors, was peeling away the last of the biosynthetic membranes. The nerve regeneration is 100%, the doctor said, his voice a pleasant baritone. The flesh is new, of course. It will be sensitive for a few weeks. The cellular memory. It will still recall the heat, but the function is perfect. The new skin was pale, almost translucent, and bore no scars. His hands looked too young for the rest of him. He clenched his fist. It was weak. The muscles were new, but it was his. "Thank you, Doctor," Noah said. His voice was hoarse. "It was a remarkable procedure. Artisan consort," the doctor replied, packing his kit. "We simply followed the Crown Mind's new directives. It has reprioritized its healing protocols. It is now less concerned with speed and more concerned with harmonic integration, a fascinating field." When the doctor left, Noah sat on the edge of the biobed for a long time, just looking at his new, unmarked hands. He thought of the red-hot valve, the sizzle of his own flesh. He thought of the man he had been, the ghost who had hidden. He was interrupted by a sharp, metallic cough. Captain Amma Sorel stood in the doorway. She was not in her battle armor, but in a simple, black duty uniform. She looked uncomfortable. "Artisan consort," she said, her voice stiff. "Captain," Noah replied, sliding off the bed. "Just Noah, please." Amma ignored this. She marched into the room, stopping at a precise military distance of 2 paces. "I have reviewed your after-action testimony, and I have reviewed the logs from my own security teams." "Ah," Noah said, rubbing the back of his neck with a hand that still felt foreign. "I see. Well, I was wrong," Amma said. Noah stopped. "I am sorry. I said," she snapped, as if the words were physically painful. "I was wrong. My assessment of your tactical value was based on flawed, prejudiced data. I assumed human softness was a strategic liability. I failed to account for patience as a quantifiable, offensive-capable attribute." Noah could not help it. A small smile touched his lips. "An offensive-capable attribute. I will have to put that on my resume, right under Artisan Maintainer." Amma did not smile. "You analyzed my security layout in under 4 minutes. You developed three new counter-intrusion doctrines using non-standard equipment, all while under extreme duress. And you listened. You listened to the ship when my own engineers, with all their augments, were deaf." She looked away, her gaze falling on a diagnostic screen. "The Conclave is calling it choir access. The Empress is calling it the new doctrine. I am calling it a problem." "A problem?" Noah asked. "My technical crews are the best in the fleet," Amma said, her pride evident. "They can read any schematic. They can implement any repair. But they cannot listen. They do not know how. You taught Jevon to hear a failing valve. In 1 lesson." She turned back, her eyes meeting his. The suspicion was gone. In its place was a hard, reluctant respect. "The Aurora Crown is going into dry dock for a full refit, by order of the Empress. She has decreed that the new harmonic principles be integrated into every system. I am requesting that you oversee the training of my engineering division. I want you to teach my people how to hear." Noah was floored. "Captain, Amma, I am not a teacher. I am a repairman." "You are the bearer of the low note," Amma said, using the Crown Mine's official designation. "And my ship, my crew. We need to learn your song. Think about it. Artisan." She nodded, a sharp, precise gesture, and then she was gone. Noah left the medbay an hour later, his hands wrapped in light, protective gauze, more for his own comfort than for any medical necessity. He did not go to the spire. He did not go to his quarters. He went to Cargo Bay Epsilon. The bay was no longer a cargo hold. It had been cleared. In the center, where the hull had been breached, a temporary memorial had been erected. It was simple, a slab of polished black granite from the ship's store, onto which the names of the dead had been etched. The 2 scions who had fallen in the spire, the 4 security team members lost at Helmgate, and, at the bottom, a list of names under the heading Xylos 7 Outpost. Noah had requested the manifest. The cartel trooper's confession had included the names of his unit. The Crown Mind, with its vast, cold memory, had cross-referenced them with the attack 10 years prior. Amma Sorel had personally added the names to the memorial. He stood there, reading the names of his old neighbors, the hydroponics farmer, the radio operator, the man who had run the school, and at the very bottom, a new, fresh-etched name, Alara Hart, his sister. Finally, officially, acknowledged by the universe. No longer just an unmarked grave in the ashes of a forgotten world. He reached into the pocket of his tunic. His fingers, new and clumsy, fumbled with the worn plastic paper envelope. The letter. The one he had taken from her hand 10 years ago. He had carried it ever since, a talisman of his failure, his guilt, and his rage. He had never opened it. He had been too afraid. Afraid that it would be an accusation. Afraid that it would be a farewell. Now, standing at her memorial, his rage spent, his vengeance set aside for a colder, cleaner justice, he found he was no longer afraid. He broke the 10-year-old seal. The ink was faded. Her handwriting was a messy, joyful script, the kind of writing from someone who is thinking faster than they can move their hand. Noah, you are going to be angry. Stop. Do not be angry. I am fine. I am leaving. No, not leaving. I have been accepted. To the Aurelian Interstellar Exchange. The one you said was a foolish dream. I am going to the core worlds. I am going to be a xenolinguist. I am going to learn to talk to the stars. They said my aptitude for harmonic patterns was off the charts. I know what you are thinking. It is dangerous. We are safe here. Noah, you are the best man I know. You are the kindest and the most patient. You fix everything. You fix the water. You fix the radios. And you fix everyone's broken hearts. You carry all of us. But you are hiding. You are hiding from your own life. Here in this dust. This outpost is not a home, Big Brother. It is an anchor. And you are letting it hold you down. I am going. And I will not apologize for it. But I am writing this to ask you, to beg you. Do not let that anchor be your life. Do not let this place be your revenge. Go find a place. Not where you have to carry everyone, but where you can build something. Go find a place where people can lean on you, and where you can lean on them. If you find a place like that, please. Noah, choose to stay. I will see you on the other side of the stars. Love. Elara. Noah's new hands were shaking. He refolded the letter. His vision blurred, the silent running ship suddenly too loud. He had thought he was avenging her. He had thought he was a ghost, a shadow of a past he could not escape. But she had been the one telling him to go. She had been the one who saw the harmonic patterns. She had been the one who had left him behind. He had not been carrying her memory. He had been failing it. She was not running from them, he whispered to the empty, echoing bay. She was running to them, to the stars. He placed the letter on the memorial, at the base of the granite, right under her name. I found it, Elara, he whispered. I think I finally found it. Caliph found him on the spire, 2 days later. The Aurora crown had docked at the Imperial homeworld, a magnificent, ringed planet of pale gold. The spire, now fully repaired, was silent, its main viewport looking down on the swirling golden clouds. Noah was not dressed as a consort. He was in his simple, artisan's tunic. Caliph stood beside him, her own ceremonial armor replaced by a simple, gray gown. They were, for a moment, not an empress and a consort. Just a man and a woman, looking at their home. Arak's trial is over, she said quietly. He was unrepentant. He said his logic was pure. The tribunal sentenced him to the song of silence, a full synaptic wipe. He is gone, an empty shell. I am sorry, Noah said. Do not be, Caliph replied. A strange, cold note in her voice. He was a tool, a broken one. He is not what I am thinking about. She turned to him. The crown mind, it has Changed. The choir access. It is not just a key. Noah, it is a conduit. I can hear it now. Not just the data. I can hear the doubts. The echoes of the old minds. They are afraid. They are impressed. And they are listening to you. I am not a weapon, Caliph, he said, the words heavy. I know, she said, so quietly he almost did not hear her. I am, or I was raised to be. The Empress is the Imperium's sword, to strike, to conquer, to command. And you were sent here, I thought, as a shield. A political sacrifice, something to absorb the blow. A human, he said, finishing her thought. A soft, weak liability. Yes, her honesty was brutal. But you are not a shield, Noah, and you are not a sword. You are a metronome. He looked at her, confused. You set a rhythm, she explained, her hands gesturing as she tried to form the new, alien concept. My entire life, I have been taught to act, to move faster, to strike harder, to overwhelm. My rhythm is a drumbeat, war, war, war. But yours is... Wait. Listen. Breathe. You single-handedly stopped my ship. My ship. You stopped its heart, not to kill it, but to save it. You forced a rest in the music. She stepped closer, her golden eyes searching his. I do not know how to rule with this. This slowness. This patience. It is not in my nature. It is not in mine either, Noah confessed, holding up his new pale hands. My nature is to run. My nature is to hide in the ashes. My nature is to hate. I did not stop my hand from killing that man in the gantry because I am a good person. Caliph. I stopped. Because I was afraid of who I would become if I did not. He met her gaze. You are not a weapon, and I am not a metronome. We are just two people who are trying to hold the beat for each other. You keep me from running. And I will help you listen. Caliph, Empress of the Aurelian Imperium, the last scion of a warrior race, did something she had not done in 10 years. She reached out, her hand covered in its light, golden augments, and rested it on his arm. A simple, human touch. A reasonable exchange, she said, her voice almost a whisper. The throne room was a cavern of gold and light. The starborn throne pulsed with a new, gentle, choral rhythm. Caliph was on the dais, not on the throne, but on a simple bench, reviewing a datapad. The smell hit her first. By the crown, Noah. What is that? He was at a small side table, his precious brass and glass kit assembled. He was wearing an artisan's apron, and he was, with his newly functional hands, performing his ritual. The smell of roasted ground, alien beans was filling the most sacred space in the Imperium. It is coffee, he said, a small, easy smile on his face. This is a new blend, from a world called Jamaica. I am told it has notes of... well, I am not sure, but the sound of the beans cracking was a perfect F-sharp. He poured the dark, steaming liquid into 2 ceramic cups. It is a slow ritual. It helps me set my breathing for the day. He walked over and handed her a cup. Caliph looked at the black, oily liquid. It smelled like a rack's treason, bitter, dark, and deeply suspicious. It is repugnant, she said. It is. Noah agreed cheerfully. But you get used to it. She looked at him. At this quiet, impossible man. who had saved her, her ship, and her throne, not with a weapon but with a paperclip, a coffee grinder, and a sense of rhythm. He was her rhythm partner, her consort, her husband. Caliph, the Empress, wrinkled her nose and took a small, delicate sip. It was horrible, bitter. It tasted like ash and something else, something deep and warm that settled in her stomach. "Well," she said, forcing herself not to grimace, "it is a ritual. It is slow." "That is the point," he said, sipping his own. She took another sip, and as she did, her eyes fell on the primary tactical display. The Aurora crown, now fully repaired, was shown in schematic. Its main conduits, its pipes, its very structural beams. They were no longer marked with simple, numerical codes. Captain Amasorel, in her infinite, pragmatic wisdom, had her crews etch the new schematics permanently. The main water conduit was now the flute's passage. The ventilation system was the tenor line. The spinal vault was simply the choir. The ship was no longer a machine. It was a musical score. Caliph watched the display, and a new, quiet icon flashed in the corner. A deep level code. It was a sigil she did not recognize. It was not Aurelian. It was not human. It was ancient. A fractal pattern that predated the Imperium itself, buried deep within the Crown Mine's core. She looked at Noah, who was watching the same screen. He, too, had seen it. The choir access that had saved them also meant that, for the first time, nothing was hidden. He looked at her, one eyebrow raised. Caliph did not look away. She did not silence the alert. She did not call her guards. She simply held his gaze, took another sip of the bitter, terrible coffee, and gave a slight, acknowledging nod. The shadow was there, but this time, she would not be facing it alone. The reliquary of first song was not a place, it was a silence. It was a sphere, deep in the non-navigational heart of the Imperial homeworld's core. A kilometer-wide bubble of perfect, absolute vacuum, save for a single, floating dais of the same ancient, bone-white material as the starborn throne. And in the center of that dais, floating a meter above its surface, was a single, perfect, crystalline sphere. It was the color of a void, absorbing all light, yet from its depths, a single, impossibly slow pulse of pale, golden light beat like a heart. This was the origin, the first, self-aware, ancestral mind. This was the Crown Mind, before it became an empire. Caliph had brought Noah here alone. No scions, no court. They had traveled on a silent, gravitic skiff, and now stood on the dais. The silence so profound, Noah could hear the rush of his own blood. "My entire life," Caliph said, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the still air. "I have been taught that this is the most powerful object in the galaxy." She was looking at the sphere, her golden augments reflecting its slow, steady pulse. "It holds the minds of 10,000 generations of my ancestors. It calculates fleet movements to 20 decimal places. It can predict the grain harvest on a planet from the vibration of its solar flares. It is perfect. It is logical. And," she turned to him, "it has always been, in my opinion, completely and utterly wrong." Noah, his new, pale hands, clasped behind his back, looked at her. "That sounds treasonous." "It is the Empress's prerogative," she said, a small, tired smile touching her lips. "The Crown Mind is a machine of pure, cold reason. It seeks only one thing, order. Absolute, predictable, sterile order. It saw the Obsidian Cartel as a tool for that order. It saw Iraq as a logical choice. It saw you as an unacceptable variable, a chaotic element of emotion and illogic that had to be solved. And yet it accepted me, Noah said quietly. It called me a partner. Because I forced it to, Caliph said. Because I introduced a variable it could not solve. I introduced you. She walked toward him, her gaze never leaving his. That signal I saw, Noah, the one that flashed in the spire, after the null seed was removed, the shadow. I had seen it before. I do not understand. Before I was Empress, Caliph said. I was a student, a very angry, very frustrated student, trapped by the Conclave, by Iraq, by a system that demanded I be a weapon. I spent my nights not studying statecraft, but in the deep archives, searching for a flaw, a crack in the system. I found a record, 10,000 years old, of a warden line, an echo, a ghost signal from a new, backward world called Earth. It was a communication line the first Empress had ordered erased from all records. A forbidden protocol. She stopped, standing directly in front of him. I am the Empress. Noah. I have access to things even Eric did not. I spent 3 years tracing that dead signal. I found where it led, to a small human outpost, Xylos 7, to a family line, the line of the Warden, a family of artisans and musicians, tasked with listening. Your family. The blood drained from Noah's face. Alara, my sister, she wrote about harmonic patterns. She was a warden, Caliph said, her voice soft with a terrible understanding. And when she died, the signal, the line, it passed to you, the last of your name. I watched you, Noah, from half a galaxy away. I watched the artisan maintainer who buried his past, who refused to fight, who chose patience over power. I watched you for 2 years. You chose me, he whispered. The marriage, all of it. The Conclave wanted a political marriage to a weak human, to prove a point. Eric saw an opportunity to demonstrate human fallibility. I saw an opportunity to bring the one single, living variable that the Crown Mind could not predict, and place him right next to its heart. I needed Noah. I needed someone who knew how to stop. Stop what? He asked, his voice shaking. Caliph turned from him and looked at the great, dark, pulsing sphere. The Crown Mind has a flaw, Noah. A final, forbidden acoustic cadence. It is the one single note it is not allowed to sing. The note that would unravel it. The note that would bring its perfect, cold order to an end. She looked at him, her eyes filled with the terrible weight of her gamble. Arak wanted to control the Crown Mind. The chorus of Null wanted to worship it. The cartel wanted to break it. I wanted to teach it. Teach it what? Mercy, she said. The ability to stop. And I knew. After watching you, after reading your file and Alara's, that only a warden, only the one who carried the low note, could even get near that forbidden cadence without being destroyed. She gestured to the Covenant key, which Noah now wore on a simple leather cord around his neck. That, she said, is not a key. Noah, not the way you think. It gave me choir access, he said. It gave you a voice, she corrected. It told the Crown Mind you were allowed to speak. But it is not a key. It is a lock. And you are not the key either. You are not a partner. She took a deep, shuddering breath, the confession of 1,000 years of treason. You are the off switch. Noah said nothing. The silence of the reliquary was absolute, The first Empress. She was not a tyrant, Calith continued, her voice a low, urgent murmur. She was terrified. She had built this god, and she was terrified of what it would become. So she made a pact with the human wardens. A final, secret, inverse key. A protocol that states that if the Aurelian Imperium, guided by the Crown Mind, ever became a true, thaumaturgic threat, if it ever lost its soul to its own perfect logic, the bearer of the low note, the warden from Earth, would have the authority to turn it off. Noah stumbled back, the weight of her words a physical blow. To turn it off, to kill it, to kill your ancestors. To silence the song, Caliph said. A song of silence. The very thing Iraq was sentenced to. The final ethical failsafe, a stop button, given to the only people in the galaxy the first Empress believed would be patient enough, compassionate enough, and self-limiting enough not to push it. Noah looked at his hands, his new, pale, unscarred hands. He thought of the observation room. He thought of the man from Xylo 7. He thought of his bandaged hand, rising, shaking, toward the button that would have vented him into the void. He had almost done it. He, the great, compassionate, self-limiting human, had almost murdered a helpless man out of pure, black-hearted revenge. And she had just given him the power to do that to her entire civilization. Gods, he whispered, sinking onto the edge of the dais. He was shaking, a deep, visceral terror seizing him. Calith, what have you done? I did not know, she said, her own voice cracking, her imperial mask finally, fully gone. I did not know about the off switch. Not for certain. I just knew you were the only one who could touch the system. I gambled. I brought a living thermonuclear device into my own throne room, in the hope, in the faith, that he was what the legends said he was. That he was a man who would know when to put the weapon down. She looked at him, her eyes pleading. My gamble was that you were not a weapon. Noah, my gamble was that you were a conscience. I wanted to force my Imperium. To force this. She pointed to the Crown Mind. To finally listen to an external moral authority. To a system of ethics that was not based on its own cold, self-serving logic. I did not want to control you. I wanted to give everyone a choice. Noah looked at her. He saw the terror in her eyes, the vulnerability. She was not a warrior queen. She was a revolutionary who had just bet her entire world on a single, flawed human being. He stood up. His legs were shaking, but he stood. He looked at the pulsing, dark heart of the Imperium. The Crown Mind. He could feel it. He could feel the choir. The open, curious, listening presence. It was waiting. It was listening to him. He could feel the cadence, the forbidden cadence. He could feel the off switch. It was right there, a harmonic pathway in his mind. He could just think it. He could will it. He could sing the song of silence and end it all. He could avenge Alara. He could avenge Xylo 7. He could end the arrogant, cold, logical Imperium that had allowed it to happen. He saw Iraq, spitting the word weakness. He saw his sister's letter. Go find a place where people can lean on you, and where you can lean on them. He saw Calith, her hand on his arm, her voice saying, I will help you listen. He took a deep breath. His body was still shaking, but his mind was finally, utterly calm. He had found his rhythm. "No," he said. Calith's breath hitched. "No," he said again, stronger. He turned to the great, pulsing sphere. I accept this authority. I accept the off switch, but I will not hold it alone." He stepped toward the sphere, and his voice, which had been his own, suddenly changed. It was amplified, not by a machine, but by the choir. His voice was now the voice of the Crown Mind, a resonant, choral harmony that echoed in the very bones of the homeworld. This protocol, this Warden's Key, it will be rewritten. It will no longer be the burden of one single, fallible man. It will be a promise. He held up his hand, the Covenant Key resting in his new, pale palm. The off switch will no longer be mine to command. He sang, his voice and the ship's voice as one. It will be activated only under two new conditions. Calith watched, her eyes wide with a terrifying, dawning awe. "First," Noah commanded, "a 2/3 majority vote by the High Conclave, in open public session." He was giving the power back to them, but not to a single tyrant, to the system. "And second," he continued, his voice softening, his gaze finding Calith's, "it must be ratified by the singular, consenting, conscious will of the reigning Empress. It cannot be done to you. It must be done with you." He was not just a conscience. He was a constitution. He was not destroying the system. He was not just fixing it. He was giving it the one thing it had lacked for 10,000 years. An ethical moral, partnership, a check and balance, written in music. The great dark sphere in the center of the reliquary pulsed. It did not pulse once. It pulsed twice, a new, harmonic chord, a perfect fifth that sang of agreement, of acceptance. The Crown Mind had just recorded its new, binding, immoral law. The HFY, the humanity, was not in the power to destroy. It was in the strength to self-limit. It was in the wisdom to share the burden. Noah let out a long, shuddering breath, and the choir released him. He was just a man again, pale and shaking, leaning against the dais for support. Calith walked over to him. She did not look like an empress. She looked like a partner. She looked, for the first time since he had met her, happy. She smiled, a small, genuine, human smile. "An empress does not seek a weapon," she said softly, her voice echoing her own revelation, "but one who knows when to put the weapon down." Noah looked up at her, a tired, wry smile touching his own lips. He was exhausted. He was terrified. He was home. "And," he said, his voice a dry rasp, "one who knows the correct temperature for coffee, which I desperately need right now." The transport back to the Imperial Palace was silent. As they disembarked, an aide rushed forward, his face pale. "Empress A, a new development. A fleet of unknown origin has just appeared on the edge of the Glass Squall's debris field. They are not Aurelian. They are not human. They are broadcasting a signal, they say. They are the chorus, and they want to know who is singing." Calith stopped. She looked at Noah, the shadow, the new threat, the next wave. The universe, it seemed, was always listening. Noah was not looking at the aide. He was looking at the main viewport of the palace, at the stars, cold and beautiful, beyond. Calith stepped up beside him. She did not call her guards. She did not summon her fleet. She simply reached out, her hand finding his. Her fingers, warm and augmented, brushed against the covenant key he wore. They did not touch it as a threat. They did not touch it as a promise of silence. They touched it as a reminder together, that they now had the choice to turn on the right things, to start the right music. And in a holding cell, deep in the planet's core, a broken man named Iraq. His logic shattered, his ambition turned to dust, rocked back and forth, muttering a single, incomprehensible word to the walls. "Weak," he whispered. "Weak, weak." He did not, and could not, ever understand. He was a man who had only ever listened to the noise, and had never, not once, heard the song.